This is Bill Albright, folks. Good evening or late afternoon, and welcome to another session on the Center Street project. This is a study of Center Street from Sullivan Street to Fort Henry Drive, looking at various traffic issues and also looking at development issues. Glad to have folks that are online right now, and I'm sure there'll be some more joining us. We had a session last fall that went over some of the basics of what we wanted to accomplish. Gotten into the research part of the study, and we should have some things to give folks tonight, some updates. We'll say that if you're not logged into the Center Street project, you're in the wrong spot, but not glad to have you, everybody here. Again, this is the center stage, is what it's called, to give it a good name. And really, when you think about it, Center Street is the main drag, so to speak, into downtown Kingsport. It's our front door, so it's very, very important arterial, very important infrastructure part of Kingsport, and it's something that we've seen some decline in the quality of what's in that area, and we want to see what we can do to spruce things up, move traffic more efficiently, and just make it a better corridor at all, especially since it does lead into downtown, and that's what people see and what the image they get when they first come in to Kingsport in some cases. We're going to cover several topics tonight, and I'm just reading off the list here. How did we get there? And we'll be just describing that. Key findings to date. The vision, we established a while back, the vision for East Center Street. Of course, where can we go to learn more? There'll be a question and answer time at the end of this session presentations. So be sure and stay around for that. And in the meantime, we want to find out who's on board with us, who's in the room with us, so to speak. And we have a little survey that we want to have everybody fill out, and different questions here. Actually, one question: who's in the room today? So you need to check that what does apply, and you may live in the study area. So that's real important if you live in the study area, or if you're just a resident of Kingsport but not in the study area. We want to know that. If you own a business in the study area, that's extremely important. Of course, the area that you were talking about is the green dots, the oval there that you see on the aerial photo. That's the area that's the study area, and you would be living within those boundaries. And lastly, if other category, you may live outside the city. You may live in Colonial Heights or Gray Station or Mount Carmel or wherever. You may use this part of Kingsport's roadway system, East Center Street, or coming in and out of that area to get to work or shop or whatever. So even though you may not live in Kingsport, you still have a large part to do with the issues that are on Center Street. So be sure and mark that as well. And we'll give you a second to do that. We may see some results from that, Rachel.
Yep, I just shared the results.
Okay. It looks like a large percentage of people that are that live in the city, but travel along East Center Street but don't live in the study area itself. And there's some that live outside the city or outside the, I guess that is city limits, that are of course interested as well in this study. So that's good to know. And at this point in time, I'm just going to pass this over to Leslie Phillips. Leslie is the manager of this project. She's done a great job so far, and really done a super effort in putting this together and working with our consultants. And we'll hand this over to Leslie, and she's going to describe some more things.
And everyone, as you're hearing things tonight, feel free to access the Q&A button on your screen and submit questions that way. And then at the very end of our time tonight, we'll read off those questions and get some answers for you.
All right, Leslie, you're up.
Thanks, Bill. I'm Leslie Phillips, Transportation Planner with the City of Kingsport and Kingsport MTPO, and Center Stage Project Manager. I'd like to join Bill in welcoming you to tonight's virtual town hall. Center Stage is a partnership between the City of Kingsport and the Tennessee Department of Transportation. In 2021, the city applied for and was awarded an urban transportation planning grant by TDOT. 2021 is the first year that TDOT offered these planning grants to urbanized areas, and it is funded 90% by TDOT and 10% by the City of Kingsport. The grant is to provide cities in Tennessee with planning resources to achieve community transportation and land use visions and future economic growth. The city is one of only a handful of communities to receive this grant in 2021. The city used the resources provided by the grant to create a plan and vision for the future of East Center Street to enhance travel for all users and to create an environment for businesses and neighborhoods to thrive. As mentioned earlier, the study area for the project begins at Sullivan Street and extends to the split with Fort Henry Drive near Dobbins-Bennett High School, and all of the plan recommendations focus on this area. And as Rachel mentioned before, use the Q&A button. If you think of something throughout this presentation, go ahead and enter it in the Q&A box, and we'll get to those in just a little bit. So for the key findings, the project team spent a considerable amount of time and effort to better understand East Center Street and some of its needs. Here are some of the key findings. We collected and analyzed data on traffic, bicycle and pedestrian activity, and safety in the corridor. Many of you shared concerns about traffic congestion on East Center Street, particularly the road diet section that has the 2 travel lanes. But the traffic count data actually suggested that the current design of the street has plenty of capacity for current traffic volumes. There may be some congestion at specific intersections. So this that you're looking at right now, the dotted line shows the hourly capacity for a 2-lane facility, and the graph at the bottom is actually our traffic counts by hour. And this is actually on that 2-lane section near Dale Street. So the traffic data also shows that actual vehicle speeds exceed the posted speed limit even during rush hour. So along this corridor, TDOT does an annual count at one location, so they just collect traffic counts. But the City of Kingsport went out at the beginning of this study after school, it was back in session, to make sure we captured accurate data, and they did counts at 3 locations. So they did a count on the 4-lane section, they did a count in front of the Renaissance Center, and then also, as I mentioned, the 2-lane section there at Dale Street. And the City of Kingsport counts, they go for a whole week. They do counts, speed, type of vehicle, so a lot more data. We also collected data on pedestrian activity on East Center Street and found that hundreds of pedestrians crossed the corridor at multiple locations throughout the day. This information and more helped the team make recommendations for East Center Street. So it's always helpful to get a street level view and to experience how people use East Center Street on a daily basis. The project team walked the entire length of the study area, taking notes, pictures, and measurements. We also visited every business that was open when we were out there and spoke to many business owners. We went on a Friday in July, and it was very hot. Actually, it was the first day of Fun Fest too. Many of you came to see us at Kingsport Farmers Market on the first Saturday of Fun Fest. Oh. Okay, thanks.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. We really enjoyed getting to meet you and your pets and to have face-to-face conversations about your interest and issues on East Center Street. For those of you who weren't able to make any of the in-person meetings, we did provide an online comment map on the project website. We received hundreds of comments on walking, driving, cycling, beautification, and land use and development on East Center Street. The map is currently closed for comment, but you can still go on the website and read the comments that others have left. And again, don't forget to use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to go ahead and send us any questions that you may have, and we'll get to those in just a little bit. So the corridor options. So listening to what you told us, what we saw in the data and our own observations, the project team developed several different ideas for addressing the issues and opportunities on East Center Street. I will say originally the plan was for the consultant to give us 3 scenarios, and that was for the whole corridor from Sullivan Street to Fort Henry. When we got out here there doing the site visit, they quickly saw how different the sections operate. So it was their idea to go ahead and give us options on 2 different sections that the city can mix and match if they choose. So they provided options for East Center Street from Sullivan Street to Wilcox Drive, which we also call west of Wilcox. And then also from Wilcox to Fort Henry, or what we call east of Wilcox. In November, we held an open house at the Renaissance Center to share the ideas and get your feedback. We also posted the ideas to the project website and collected responses in an online survey. Through conversations, map comments, and the survey, you provided a lot of great feedback on our proposed ideas. Here are some of the ideas that stood out the most. Landscaping and beautification. By far, the greatest amount of positive feedback received on the proposed ideas came from the improved landscaping and beautification. Residents who took the survey said they liked ideas that provided plenty of opportunities for trees, landscaping, signage, and other ways to improve the appearance of East Center Street. On-street parking. Many residents said they liked on-street parking and chose proposed ideas that kept existing on-street parking intact. Medians and bulb outs. Many of you said you like the medians and bulb outs because of the opportunities they provide for landscaping and traffic calming. And the bicycle lane, we hear a lot about that. I mean, a lot of people make jokes and negative comments, but actually many residents said that they like the existing bike lanes on East Center Street and want future design. So in just a minute, we'll take a look at the preferred vision and recommendations. But first, quick reminder, use the Q&A button to go ahead and submit your questions while they're fresh on your mind. And now I'd like to ask Kevin Tilbury from Kimley Horn to join me to share the recommended vision for East Center Street.
Thanks, Leslie, and I'd echo my appreciation of you joining us today. Thanks for your time. We're excited to share the fruits of your labor and sort of helping us create a vision for Center Stage. Actually, you can go to the next slide. So we developed the options. We went out and presented them to you. We got your feedback, and this is the recommended plan based on what you told us. So a couple of points that I'd like to make about the vision is the 3 things that we really tried to do is, as Leslie mentioned, the consistent feedback we got from everyone is let's make Center Street a more attractive place. That, you know, it's one of our important gateways into the city, and let's make it look, you know, really nice. So we tried to create plenty of opportunities for landscaping and for placemaking. So if someone wanted to have a cafe with outdoor seating or a place to gather, or, you know, opportunities for trees, all that sort of thing. And as Leslie mentioned, also our data and analysis showed that there is a little bit of a speeding issue, and that's just because of the way that the road is designed. So we tried to make some recommendations that would encourage more appropriate motor vehicle speeds consistent with the posted speed limit. And also, there's a lot of pedestrian activity in the corridor, and so we wanted to create a more pleasant, comfortable, and safe experience, whether you're driving, walking, riding a bike. We want to make it a nice place for you to be that would hopefully then become a place for investment, and that we would see more development and businesses come into the area. So with that, let's dive in and show a little more detail. So as Leslie mentioned, we looked at different options for either side of North Wilcox Drive on East Center Street. So this is the section from downtown heading east to North Wilcox Drive. And right now that's currently what we call a 3-lane road. So it's got 1 travel lane in each direction and then a center turn lane. Our vision does not change that. It keeps that same general configuration, but adds several enhancements. And I think if you click, some of the things will pop in there, Rachel. So, you know, a couple of things are that we installed medians or traffic islands that you see there in that center turn lane. And that's going to do, that has several benefits that we'll get to in a minute. We also, where there's currently on-street parking, we didn't take away the parking, but we, in certain strategic locations, we put bulb outs, and you can see there where the little arrow is pointing to a bulb out that sort of juts out into the on-street parking, and that has some benefits too. And then, one of the things Leslie mentioned is we heard from you that a lot of people actually like the bike lane on Center Street, so we did not take it away. We kept it there as well. So that's the overall vision west of North Wilcox, and then heading the other direction from North Wilcox out to Fort Henry Drive, heading further east. Right now, that's 4 lanes, so 2 lanes in each direction. Again, we didn't change that general configuration, but we added some enhancements. So one of the things that we heard is that people like the shoulder that's in place because it can be used for pickup, drop off, or parking and things. So we didn't fundamentally change the shoulder. It stays in place in most locations, but then we added the mini bulb outs. So again, some little bulb outs that would go out into the road, and those provide some benefits that we'll get to in a minute. And then in other locations on that section, we would transition away from the shoulder, and then we would create an opportunity to create a median in the center of the road. If you go to the next slide, Rachel, it'll highlight that. So here, in some sections, we keep the 2 lanes in each direction, but they would shift out to the side of the road. And in the middle, we could build a raised landscape median, and then at major intersections that we would put in a turn lane. So let me take a few minutes and describe why it is that we did that. I think one of the most important things is that we heard from you all is that landscaping and beautification was really important. And so we tried to create a design that would create plenty of opportunities for additional landscaping. And so that can happen in the medians that would be installed in the center turn lanes. So you could put in, they're wide enough that you could install smaller trees or shrubs or other types of landscaping, signage. And then the same thing on the bulb outs, that they would provide enough space there that if you wanted to provide additional landscaping there, you could. If you want, if it's adjacent to a restaurant or a building that wanted to become a restaurant, you might even be able to put in some on-street, some outside dining too, if you make the bulb outs large enough. So if you go to the next slide, and this is just another illustration of that, of where all those things could happen. So we really tried to provide a lot of opportunities. And in a minute, we'll show you where you can go online and see the full plan, and you can see all the locations where we proposed this to happen. A couple of other things, again, that we heard is that we wanted to slow down cars and make them move at appropriate speeds. So the design achieves that in a couple of ways. And if you go to the next slide, Rachel, we can explain. First, I would like to point out too, one of the things that we heard is that right now people cross the street in random locations because there aren't a lot of, there are certain stretches of the road that are pretty long without any marked or designated crossing. So we've made some specific recommendations to build some crossing locations, and that's where we would get those bulb outs and the median to work together to create that crossing location. You can see that's what's going on right there. So that's where someone could step out into a bulb out, cross into that island, wait for traffic, and then cross again, and then set some signalization to go with it. And so we tried to provide some safe, designated opportunities for pedestrian crossing. You go to the next slide. So one of the things too, again, that we heard is that at certain times, motor vehicles traffic could exceed the speed limit, and so we tried to introduce some very subtle ways of calming traffic so that it would move at appropriate speeds. And one of the ways that we did it is through what's called horizontal deflection, where we narrow the road. We use design elements to narrow the road down, which will naturally cause people to slow down. And you can see where we go from where the on-street parking is to where the bulb out and the median is, the road narrows. And so that's going to create that horizontal deflection and calm traffic. The other way that we did it is that you'll recall that we talked about providing a median alternating with bulb outs. If you go to the next slide, Rachel, we can illustrate. So you can see on the left, you see a bulb out, and then further to the right, you see a median. And in order to make those two things happen, the road has to shift a little bit. And that's a very subtle way of calming traffic too. When you introduce that subtle shift, it's gonna calm traffic. So that's another way that that we try to make the corridor more people friendly while still moving traffic at appropriate speeds. We heard from a lot of you on the merge, and essentially what that is once you get past the traffic, if you're heading in from Fort Henry into downtown, once you get past the signal at Wilcox and start to head past the Renaissance Center, the lanes go from 2 to 1, and sometimes the perception is that vehicles will speed to try to get first in line to beat that merge. And so one of the ideas that we have to kind of fix that is to make the merge happen right at that intersection of Wilcox Drive. So the outside lane, when you're coming in from into downtown, is right turn only there at Wilcox and Wabash, and so it peels off, and then only the inside lane continues on. So the merge would happen there and would no longer happen further down towards the Renaissance Center. The other thing that that the plan does is that it tries to enhance the intersections, and it does that in a number of ways. Providing clear markings for crossing, bulb outs, which provide additional opportunities for landscaping and placemaking and signage, and also the implementation of decorative mast arms. So instead of the signals are sort of hung by overhead wires, replacing those with a more decorative mast arm that's going to make the corridor look nicer and help the operations of the intersection. The other thing that we did there is you'll notice that we intentionally created opportunities for left and right turn lanes. Overall, the corridor has plenty of capacity for cars, but some of you told us that you experience congestion on Center Street during certain times of day, and the reason why is because that congestion is happening at the intersections. So one of the things that we tried to do is to improve congestion at the intersection by providing dedicated lanes for all the turn movements. One of the other things that we did, so we're trying to make the corridor nice overall for people that want to walk, bike, even if you want to drive. But the other reason that we're doing it is that we want to create a place where businesses will want to invest and where people will want to go and visit. And so we came up with we came up with a vision for land use. What we found is that further east from Wilcox out towards Fort Henry Drive is generally that section of the corridor is doing pretty well. The intersection at Fort Henry, the commercial node there is pretty strong. Most of the homes along that section are pretty strong. There's there's medical service office uses on the south side that are doing pretty well. So we want to reinforce all those things. We don't want to fundamentally change them. But then once we get further into downtown, that's the area that really has a potential to change, that is in a great location. So it's in between downtown and the Renaissance Center, which are two tremendous assets that we want to take advantage of. So our vision for this section of the corridor is what we call a culture corridor. So we're not going to fundamentally change the scale or the nature of the types of development there, but we're going to create an environment where new businesses would want to invest. And we're talking about things like local retail, restaurants, nonprofits, things that would benefit from being close to the Renaissance Center. So if you wanted to attend an event at the Renaissance Center or downtown, maybe you could just take a short walk along this section of Center Street and visit a restaurant, or maybe visit a gallery or something like that. So creating opportunities to adaptively reuse a lot of the buildings there is what the land use vision would be. So that's sort of an overall, a 10,000 foot view of what the vision is for Center Street. In a minute, we'll show you where you can actually go online and look at all the details and see the report. But first, we wanted to stop and give you another polling question and ask, what you thought about the preferred vision. So first, we want you to think about that section that we presented first. So the section from Sullivan Street to Wilcox Drive, that's that section, into downtown where it's currently 3 lanes. What did you like most about what we presented in the preferred vision? And you can select up to 3 of the options that you see on the screen. So is it the landscaping and beautification? Do you like the traffic calming aspects of it? The pedestrian safety enhancements, some of those intersection improvements that we talked about, the fact that it has bicycle lanes, that we're keeping on-street parking, access management. So one of the things that we didn't talk about in detail, but as part of the plan, is that we would consolidate some of the driveways and some of the turn movements to kind of clean those up a little bit too, to make it easier for people to drive up and down, or maybe something else. So we'll just take a minute and let you vote and pick the one that you like the best, or the three rather, that you like most about the vision. How are we doing, Rachel? Did everyone get a chance to vote?
Looks like we've got about 3 people that haven't. So we'll give you one more minute to put in your votes. Okay, I'm going to end the polling.
Okay. So a lot of you said the pedestrian safety enhancements was the most popular. That's good, because it definitely is an issue there. Keeping on-street parking, better managing access, intersection improvements, some of the landscaping, and then one of you did like the bicycle lane. So great, awesome. Thank you. And then now let's think about that other section of the corridor. So from Wilcox further east to Fort Henry Drive. So that's the section that's currently 4 lanes, and the vision, talks about putting in the mini bulb outs in the shoulder in some places, and then in other places replacing the shoulder with a median or traffic island running along the inside. So for this section, tell us what you liked about that. Is it the opportunity for landscaping and beautification? Is it traffic calming aspects, some of the intersection improvements, the on-street shoulder, or something else? So we'll give you a minute or two to respond. All right, how did we turn out, Rachel? Okay, so landscaping and beautification, some of the intersection improvements, on-street shoulder, and then some people said something else. So interesting. Okay, well, thank you. Okay, and we want to hear your questions, but just quickly before we do, if you want to learn more about the preferred vision, if you want a little more detail, you can go to the project website. And Rachel, if you go to the next, yeah, so and it will also, we'll send the link out to you as well after the meeting. But if you go to, you see where it says engage key right there, center stage, that's the website. And again, we'll send that link out. And if you go there, there's a link where you can actually download the report. Do you have that up, Rachel? Can you share that on your screen?
I do. Let me share this real quick. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yep. Oh, there we go. So there's the website. There's the virtual town hall that we're having right now, but then right below that is the draft final report. And if you click there, you can download it or you can look at it online, and it will provide a lot more detail into some of the data that we use to come up with the recommendations, the different options we considered, a summary of the public outreach, and then finally the recommendations. And we do have a detailed map that lays out, all of the recommendations that you can go in and look at in detail. So with that, I'm going to ask Leslie and Bill to come back and join us, and also ask my partners here at Kinley Horn who helped work on the project, Laura Kelly and Winston Mitchell, to come join us, and we'll be happy to take any questions that you might have. So Rachel, do you want to read some questions off to us?
Yes, so we have a couple of questions, and I will get started. The first one here is describe the various zoning designations in place right now, and will they change?
That's a great question. So I don't think that Ken Weems is the planning director. I'm not sure that he's here. He may want to chime in, but I will say that the land use vision that we shared today will not change. We think that it can be done within the existing zoning. So it's not going to require any fundamental change. So what the preferred vision recommends from North Wilcox Street in over to Fort Henry Drive essentially reinforces what's already on the ground, which is supported by the existing zoning. And heading west into downtown, the redevelopment that we're proposing can be achieved within the existing zoning. So we're not going to have to fundamentally change the zoning to accommodate the proposed land use.
Yeah, I agree, Kevin. And this bill, it's been, the housing along this section has been there for 70 years. So I don't really see that changing. And maybe some rehabilitation of the housing might be good, you know, some grants or things like that. The other end down the further west has some potential for economic development, but you had mentioned this in a meeting or two ago that the small business type approach would be grouping lots together, because that was not really the type of development that you were suggesting. Is that true?
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. So it can be accommodated within the existing lots. Yep.
Okay.
We did have one person send a chat that they keep getting kicked off, so hopefully it's not more people having that issue, but this presentation will be posted on the website at the, after it's over. So if you've missed part of it, or if anybody wants to watch it later, then you'll be able to access it on the project website. And for the zoning and stuff, in the full report, there's actually a breakdown of all the land use and demographics. The pedestrian counts are on there. The full report has a lot of detail in it. So anybody that's interested in taking a deeper dive and really digging into the data and reading more about the recommendations and the options and everything.
I noticed in the poll that the traffic calming vote was 0 for 9 or something like that. It might have been some folks that don't quite understand what traffic calming is. Kevin, can you explain? I think most do, but maybe some that don't completely what traffic calming is, because it got 0 votes.
So so essentially what the traffic calming will do is it's not going to impede travel on the corridor. It's just going to reinforce what the posted speed is. And so it's meant to address situations where because of the design of the road, people are probably going faster than the posted speed. And so the traffic calming measures are just meant to, using design treatments, sort of subconsciously get people to slow down and move at that appropriate vehicle speed. And that's going to make the corridor safer, not only for cars, but for people, and just to be a place that people want to be on Center Street.
Thank you.
Okay, next question. Center Street is our major parade route for 4th of July. If there is a landscape island in the middle of the street, how will the marching bands navigate? I know that's not a top priority, but it's part of our heritage and culture.
I can take that. I mean, yeah, I think it is a priority. I think it's important. So luckily, even with the median in place, there should be enough width for parades to get around it. So whether it's, the marching band or the floats or things like that. It's just a matter of operating and designating those locations. So it will be a little more tricky to navigate the median islands. We're not recommending necessarily very long medians. These would be more islands, so they wouldn't completely impede travel along the corridor. They would just be at certain locations. But yes, there should be enough width for them to get around the medians on one side or the other.
You got what, 7 feet for bicycle lane? 5 for the lane and 2 for the
Yeah.
gap.
That's correct.
So you can add that into what you got. So that might provide the space that you need for a parade for bands.
Plus the on-street parking. So it's more a matter of sort of marking and designating so that the parade route can get over, and then people can fill up the other space where the parade won't be. But yes, and the other places have done it before. It can be done.
Next question. Is there an accompanying redevelopment plan for commercial properties that dovetails with the traffic plan?
So that was the land use vision that we presented. And again, it doesn't fundamentally change the scale or character of the land use. It more sets the stage to promote what's already allowed there. And there's more detail in the final report that you can go and hear more about the land use vision, but yes, it's in there.
Did the study evaluate a 3-lane section from Wilcox to Fort Henry?
No. What we found is from Fort Henry into downtown that the 3-lane section could adequately handle the volume of traffic that was being carried on the road. From Wilcox into downtown, the traffic volumes pick up a little bit, and so because the road is already 4 lanes and it's sufficient for the volume of traffic, we didn't fundamentally change that just because of the nature of the traffic on that section of the road.
Next question. When will the proposed improvements get built?
That's a great question, and I'll let other folks, Bill or Leslie or Public Works Director Michael Thompson is here to chime in. But the vision lays out essentially 2 phases. One, the first phase would ideally be programmed within the next 3 years. And then the second phase would be, in a time frame beyond that, probably in the 3 to 6 or 7 year time frame. Whether that happens or not is really dependent on the ability to get the necessary funds to make the improvements, but that is the desired time frame. And I'll let Bill or Leslie chime in too if you have anything to add.
Well, kind of along those lines, the next step, of course, would be incorporating any feedback from this meeting. And then there'll be a presentation to the Kingsport Board of Mayor and Aldermen, probably within the next month or so. And they will have to adopt a resolution endorsing the study. So at that point, we would start looking at options and see what's going on in the corridor and look at the options, what we're most interested in implementing. And like Kevin said, he's put it in phases, and then look at available funding as well.
It's my understanding, Leslie, that you have to implement something from the plan.
Well, the resolution, you have to say that you will implement the plan recommendations from the study to the best of your ability.
Yeah.
So it'll just depend on, the characteristics of everything, and if anything major happens along the route and the available funding.
Yeah, and I think the timing, the question about how long it would take has to some degree depend on where the money comes from. If we use the federal grant, the state funding or something like that versus local dollars, it is a state route. So, but I think it had, where the money comes from will have some impact on how long it takes to get something implemented.
Great. Next question, how will these improvements get paid for?
And I'll go ahead and take that because as Bill was kind of talking about, you could do local, state, or federal funds. It is a state route, so the state, would probably put in some money for some projects. And then also with it being a state route, it would be eligible for the multimodal access grant that the state has, which is it's up to $1 million. They do it every year. It's up to $1 million. And 95% of that is paid by the state. So the city would pay 5%. But it's a competitive grant. So we would just have to apply and see if we got it.
It's a good source.
Next question, how will the bulb outs impact on-street parking?
I can go ahead.
So as you probably saw on the images, the on-street, the bulb outs would occur where there is currently on-street parking. Two things. One, we would try and put them at locations where there currently isn't a lot of parking, and that would be at the intersections. But also, if you recall, one of the things that we talked about were consolidating or closing some of the current driveways on Center Street. And so while we may take away a spot or two by installing a bulb out, when we close a driveway, that's going to create a new opportunity for an on-street space. So we anticipate really not having a net impact on parking. So we may take a few spaces away, but then we're going to return them when we create additional parking by closing driveways. So we don't anticipate any significant impacts to on-street parking.
Next question, if the west side of East Center Street redevelops, where will people park?
That's a good question. Right now, parking is not an issue because there's not a lot of activity on that section of East Center Street, but there are a couple of ways that can happen. One is that, again, we want to encourage people to walk between downtown and the Renaissance Center because we think those are two natural anchors. And if we make a nice place for people to walk, then hopefully they'll do that. So one way is to have an agreement with the Renaissance Center. So when they're not having events, is that space can be used for parking, so people could park at the Renaissance Center and then have a nice walk down up Center Street. Or if there is an event at the Renaissance Center, they can park, go to that event, and then take a walk down Center Street and visit some of the businesses. You can do it on the other end too, in downtown. You can park downtown and walk up East Center Street. It's not that far. And then the other strategy is to possibly look at one of the parcels that's either vacant or underutilized on Center Street, and the city could consider purchasing one of the parcels and using it as a centralized parking location, either free parking as a redevelopment strategy or as paid parking. That's something that the city could explore as the corridor redevelops and as you start to see friction on the parking. Right now, there's not enough need for parking in the corridor for that to make sense. But if we're successful and it does become a place where people want to go, then that may be a strategy to explore. Any more questions?
Yeah, we have one more. If anybody else has any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A and we will get to them. But right now we just have one more. Where will bicycles go once they get to North Wilcox Drive?
That's a great question. One of the things that you'll notice is that on the section, we keep the bike lanes on the section from Sullivan Street into Fort Henry, into North Wilcox, but then once you get from Wilcox into Fort Henry, there is no bike lane there, and the plan does not include one because there's just not enough right of way. If I can share my screen, I've actually pulled up what we think is a pretty viable concept for bicycle travel. So this is the, can everyone see it? See my screen?
We can't see it, Kevin.
Okay, let me try now. How about now?
Yeah.
Okay, can you see the map here?
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay, so this is the bike lane. It goes from Sullivan Street to Wilcox Drive, and so this is what we're going to keep in place. But there's really nowhere to go once you get to Wilcox Drive. So we have a couple of ideas. One is on Wilcox Drive is to convert the sidewalks into side paths so that you can take your bike on the sidewalks if they become side paths, and that would take you all the way down to the side path that connects to the YMCA. And so that's one way that we can do that. The other is that heading in the opposite direction, north, is to create a connection to downtown via Catawba Street, and that would travel up to Watauga Street. And so if we want to get from Fort Henry into downtown, is to create a bikeway on Watauga, because it's the nature of the traffic and the design of the road is that you could effectively put in a bicycle lane there, so that it wouldn't just be this lone bicycle lane here. There would sort of be a system of bicycle routes that could go in. And so this would be, an alternative to including a bike lane on this section of Center Street, which is probably a better option because the traffic picks up here, and so it may not be as great a location to ride your bike as this section of Center Street anyway.
Thanks, Kevin. So that was the last question that we had. If you are there any other questions? Feel free to put them in the Q&A box and I will read them out. Otherwise, we might be ending this a few minutes early.
I think I see a couple of questions that popped up in the chat, Rachel.
There is. Did Jeff get his questions answered?
Yeah, he kept getting kicked off, so he just went ahead. He sent us an email. He went ahead and tuned out, so he'd catch up on it later.
Okay.
Why are the projects split into 2 phases?
Good question. And so, and if you go to the report, you can see which specific projects there are. I believe the total cost of all the recommendations is between $2 and $3 million. I don't remember the exact number, maybe closer to $3 million. And that's a lot of money to try, and that's a big piece to try and bite off all at once. And so rather than do that, we said, well, let's split it into 2 phases so we can, pursue the projects that we want to pursue first that are most important. And then later, as we get additional funds, we can go in and pursue the other ones. So in the first phase, just to briefly summarize, I believe it's some of the major intersection improvements. So at Sullivan, Wilcox, and I believe one other intersection, is to go ahead and pursue those intersection improvements to install some of the medians and bulb outs at strategic locations. And then maybe a few other things, but that's the crux of the first phase. The second phase then would be to pursue the remainder of the intersection improvements and then the remainder of the bulb outs and the traffic islands. So we tried to break it off into more of a bite-sized piece so that we could, get some early wins and get some things funded quickly. And then as we get more money to fund some of the other things. I think there may be a couple of other questions. Yeah.
Yeah, so why are certain intersections grouped together in the projects?
In terms of the improvements, those are the intersections that, the ones that I just mentioned that we felt were most critical. So that is where we have the most traffic and a lot of the pedestrian activity. And so we could kill 2 birds with 1 stone, so to speak. So we can provide a safe place for people to walk. We could improve operations at that intersection and also create some nice gateways into downtown. So we thought it was important to pursue those intersections first.
Next question, why was the merge relocated?
That's a good question. So just to recap, the merge right now is right around where the Renaissance Center is. And so our vision relocates that to the intersection of North Wilcox Drive. And so again, I think that was a cause of driver confusion and possibly speeding at the merge in front of the Renaissance Center, because we have people that are trying to turn to the Renaissance Center and some people that are trying to merge. And we felt that it would be more safe and efficient, and to respond to a lot of the concerns that we heard from people, to relocate that to the intersection of North Wilcox. And it seemed to make sense from an operational standpoint.
It's a blind hill. I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
you can't see it until you get there and it's too late.
Okay, it looks like we've got one last question. Why did you not get rid of the bike lanes on East Center Street west of North Wilcox Drive?
So that is in direct response to what we heard when we, as Leslie mentioned, in November, we came up with some options, some ideas, and we showed them to people. One of the options for that section of Center Street had bike lanes. Another option did not have bike lanes. And a good number of people told us the reason they picked the option they did is because it had bike lanes, is that they want to keep that option available to people, and they want to help promote Kingsport as a place to safely walk and bike. And by keeping the bike lane in place, it sends that signal. And we could leave the bike lane in and keep all the other elements of the vision, and it's not going to impact that. And so we thought, why not? Let's respond to that need and desire to leave the bike lanes in. So that's why we did that.
But that's not to say that it couldn't be removed. Right?
Yes. Well, if that's the last question, we'll end a little bit early. Bill or Leslie, I don't know if you have anything you'd like to say in closing.
I want to say that this group with Kimley Horn is out of the Nashville office, but Winston actually works out of the Atlanta office. So when he saw this on their list of projects they were working on, he wanted to be involved in this because he's actually from Kingsport, still has his family here. So he was excited to get involved in this project with Kingsport. And Kevin laughs because when we went out and walked the corridor, everywhere we went, either Winston or I knew the people there. So were you in the band, Winston, at DB?
I was in the orchestra.
I didn't know if you had done the band and the marching parades or not. So I was going to get your perspective on that if you were. So
No, but as someone who's, as a child, was made to walk as part of the family reunions in small town parades wearing the family reunion t-shirt. I mean, I think there should be plenty of room. I mean, if nothing else, you just tell these 4 folks to go to one side and these 4 to go to the other. You just have to plan ahead a little bit for that kind of thing.
My compliments to the question people. Those are some tough questions, I'm telling you. They really are.
But very thoughtful. So that tells us you got paid attention. So we appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well, folks, again, thank you so much for joining. We will send out a link with the recording of the webinar, so you can, if you didn't get a chance to see all of it, you can, and you can share it. And then we'll also send a link to the website where you can download the full report. Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening.